On this week's episode of Stream with the Mouse, we're talking about episode 3 of Loki called Lamentis. Sit back, relax. This is Streaming with the Mouse. Welcome on back, everybody, to episode 84 of Streaming with the Mouse, where today we are talking about Marvel's Loki's. Just a fantastic episode, a new episode on Disney+. My name's Cam Ramos, and joining me as always is my co-host, my co-partner, Cliff. Cliff, say hello to the nice people.
The Loki to my Loki.
The Loki to my Loki to my Loki.
That's a great way to go. That's a great way to go. You could do also the Mobius to your Loki, but who knows? We had some bombshells this week.
We did.
Pretty wild. I have a hot take. Like
How
my
hot?
hand, like SpongeBob putting his hand on the stove
And leaving it there?
and leaving it there, and then Patrick doing it, and it's the ho.
I'm very excited for this then.
Loki is the best Marvel show.
Was that the hot
Easily.
take?
That's the hot. I think it's not that hot. I think
No,
it's
it's
lukewarm at
literally
best.
not that hot. It's a
I
very
mean,
true fact.
The social media impact of Loki, I did see that it was trending yesterday at about 500,000 people. I know we follow different people, but I have not seen as many spoilers for Loki as I did for WandaVision. Like, I feel like everyone and their mother was watching WandaVision, and it was running rampant on my timeline. But for, like, then it died down a little for Falcon and Winter Soldier. There also wasn't really much you could spoil for Falcon and Winter Soldier. And then Loki has been pretty dead on my timeline. I can go and find it on, like, my For You and trending pages, but not just my actual Twitter feed.
Do you mean the show itself or the spoilers? Because the show's popping off my Twitter feed, but the spoilers are staying away in the subsect as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, like spoilers and the memes. I'm not really getting the memes like I did for one. I have to go looking for them.
Gotcha. I think WandaVision, I think I said it a couple weeks ago, WandaVision was screwed by Paul Bettany with that little tease that it was a big thing. So I think that's why the spoilers were so heavy for WandaVision up until episode 9. This is by far, I loved WandaVision, and I really liked Falcon and Winter Soldier. This is by far the best show. I don't even think this week's episode was that great. It was very good, but it wasn't up to par for the first 2 episodes, in my opinion, for me. But it was still a great episode, and I'm so excited to see where the heck it's going next. I liked Falcon Winter Soldier a lot. I was really excited for the next week. WandaVision, I was sitting on the edge of my seat for what the heck's going to happen next. I'm that same way right now for Loki, but it is a better show for me, and it's fantastic between the variant, until we say her by her name in a little bit, and Tom Hiddleston as Loki. They're just fantastic together, and I cannot wait to see where this cast goes.
Absolutely. I was honestly kind of happy it wasn't 50 to 60 minutes this week. I don't know why. It just worked well. Like I'm glad where it left off. It left off very well for that, like, we're at the end of Empire Strikes Back when all hope is lost. I keep using that. I'm a Star Wars nerd. I'm obviously going to keep using that. But I loved where it was at. We're obviously going to have we're going to have a double header for Bad Batch for you guys. We're recording it on Monday for Tuesday. But Loki is just like, I'm just like, I wake up every Wednesday. It's like the Patrick Star, like the oh boy 3 a.m. with the Krabby Patty, and that's how I feel with this show. Like, this one, I was never really like too excited for WandaVision or Falcon Winter Soldier. This one, I like wake up and I'm like, Loki time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this was you're most looking forward to when we originally started the podcast. I think for me it was WandaVision and Miss Marvel. I think Loki was up there for you.
Loki was, I believe, one of them. I probably have the notes somewhere. We can go back and listen. Miss Marvel was number 1 though.
Miss
Marvel was number 1. But we do have some news before we jump into this.
Can I do my news real quick first?
Go right ahead.
We will be releasing an episode of the Bad Batch recapping the last episode, which was bananas. Just an awesome episode. We will do that. We had some scheduling conflicts this week, so next week we'll do one long episode where we'll talk about episode 8 and then the episode 9 that is dropping when you're listening to this on drop day today, Friday the 25th. So don't worry, we're going to talk about, I don't care, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the return of Cad Bane in this next episode of Stream with the Mouse. Do not worry, Bad Batch fans, we will absolutely get that episode to you very soon, and it'll be a nice double header where we'll talk about episode 8 and 9. So that's my news story. Cliff, your news?
Well, we have the excellent Black Widow coming to Disney Plus for an extra charge on July 9th. It will be $30. But if you do not want to actually pay for it, you can wait until October 6th. That was
Is
the
that
big
what's coming
thing.
for free?
October 6th is the free date. Other than that, there wasn't a ton of Disney Plus news. There was one thing, and I just want to get your opinion on it because I've seen people complaining and complaining, and I think it's the stupidest thing that they're complaining about. So we have news on Star Wars: The Acolyte. I don't know if you have seen this. I don't know if it pops up for
I
you
have
on
not.
Twitter. So as people know, The Acolyte is going to be the first on air, the first non-book version of Star Wars: The High Republic. Is going to take place in the waning days of the High Republic as we move into the time period of Phantom Menace, where a young Jedi starts to learn, gets exposed to the dark side. So it is being run by head writer Leslie Headland, and she gave in an interview the other day, she said that someone in her writer's room has never even seen Star Wars.
Hmm.
That was, and that, as everyone can guess, got the neckbeards fuming. Obviously, people have not taken well to the High Republic because
I think
they,
people have taken well to High
I
Republic.
think they have the fans that are not actually fans and they want to hate Star Wars just for hating Star Wars. Don't actually. There's also a lot of YouTube personalities that do the same thing. They just want to rile up the fan base. So a lot of those people are already getting mad about it because the High Republic. What are your? Do you think you have to watch Star Wars to rate Star Wars? That's what I want to
I
hear. I want to hear your opinion. Do you need to get hired if you want to get hired to write Star Wars? Do you need to have prior watch experience before it?
So is she the main writer?
No, she is the head writer. She knows Star Wars. She
Okay.
one of her people in the writer room does has never seen Star Wars.
Is this a hot take to say yes? You should watch a Star Wars
I
to
mean,
write
I
Star Wars.
will.
That's like me saying I'm gonna go write a book about like you know the anatomy of cows, but I don't have any experience with cows. I don't know. Like I feel like yeah, you should at least have watched the Star Wars. I'm sure if that's the case that this it's like a maybe she's like a the person excuse me is like a script doctor maybe like I don't think they're going to give you the detailed kind of thing. Maybe they're helping out being like a script doctor kind of thing. I don't think of writing like, oh, we're going to go travel to this planet and then this planet and this kind of shit. I doubt that's the case.
I mean, I don't. If I have my point, but I'm just gonna counter yours because as the first thing, my first belief is not everything needs to be like completely Star Wars. We know that the prequels are not known for their incredible writing for lines. We know that the lines are not always there. Bringing in someone that might just be good for dialogue is important, but
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like script doctoring. Like that's what I think it has
right,
to
stuff
be.
like that. But also like, and then also ideas. You can do fun ideas. I mean, a lot of things. But they gave the new trilogy to a man that's known as like Mr. Nerd and J.J. Abrams, and he freaking butchered it as an overall story arc, as an overall like. He even came out and said he didn't.
I
He came out and said he didn't have a plan. He said we should have
that's
planned
not a
better.
JJ that's not a JJ Abrams issue. That's a Lucasfilm issue.
Yes, but
Is that
still,
fair to say?
but yes, but it's still saying, okay, so we're gonna have a man that knows Star Wars gets hired. They didn't have a plan. He was the executive producer on the overarching thing, so him and Kathleen Kennedy were the two main ones.
Not in
But
the
then,
overarching, just 7 and 9. I
right,
don't think he had any role in 8 though.
but with Star Wars, it's.
I'll blame Kathleen over JJ
But
Abrams. That's
if
me
we're
personally.
talking Star Wars, everything when you're talking trilogies, they all go into each other. There were these base things set for what it was going to be, and then so we can go back and forth. I personally think it's fine. As I think the head writer needs to know
Yeah,
it,
okay, yeah.
but I also think though you can have someone that you like that might not have ever seen Star Wars. They say, oh, this person's very good at X, Y, and Z. Bring them in, give them a fresh look at Star Wars. Then you have
Yeah,
someone under a new eye.
yeah.
I don't think it's like the guaranteed need. Like I don't think
It
it's.
depends on the person's role. Like if they, like I said, if they're just a script doctor and they're just
No.
putting in like
George Lucas wrote Star Wars before ever watching it. But
The poor people on the audio only.
oh,
No,
that's
I'll say
great.
this is my final piece. I think if you're script doctoring it, that's fine. But if you're like actually like, here's plot points and stuff, I feel like you probably should have watched it at least once. I'm not saying you have to be an expert by
I,
any means, but you at
it's
least
just
should
the
have
thing
watched
that
it once.
they're gonna probably watch it now.
I hope so. Yeah, I
They
would
got
hope so.
hired. They got hired. Part of it, you got to do your homework once. Do you sign up for a class and do the homework over the summer? Say, oh yeah, now I'm ready for this class. No,
No, that's
you're
as long as they
learning.
watch it. Yeah, no,
You're
that's fine. That's fine. No,
learning.
I'm not mad about it. I'm just saying
I know.
they
I
should now
wanted
do it.
some healthy debate. But the floor is yours to talk about this incredible episode.
Let's do it. We're talking about episode 3, Lamentis. I had no idea what the heck that meant when I first watched it, but now we do. So we're talking about episode 3 of Loki called Lamentis. We're gonna bounce around a little bit here from place to place, just because like the very first thing that happens in this episode, if you watch it, which I hope you've watched it, if you're listening to this now,
I'd hope. I
really
would hope so.
really has an effect on the spoiler that happens toward the end. So we're gonna skip this first part in the beginning, where basically we see everything that happens during the time in Roxanne in 2050 in Alabama. We see what happens from the variant's point of view, what she was doing, how she escaped, and we get to the point of the escape where the variant leaves and Loki follows in the door with them. Loki and the variant end up at the TVA, where they're confronted by the timekeepers trying to get to the elevator that supposedly will take them to the timekeepers. They are stopped by Ravonna Renslayer, who arrives, and she doesn't care about the lives of the TVA's own. She doesn't care about their soldiers at all, which is, I thought, very telling. We'll talk about that a little bit. And before they can die, Loki activates a temp pad that transports them, both Loki, and the variant somewhere else. It brings them to a planet called Lamentis 1 in the year 2077. So we're going even further in the future now at this point, which is pretty interesting. The variant attempts to teleport out of the area. However, the temp pad has run out of power, and Loki hides the device within himself using his magic. We're in a brand new planet, a brand new timeline where we're in 2077. And again, this is going off the fact that the variant has been hiding in different apocalyptic events. So this is another apocalyptic event. It's Lamentis 1. It's a moon that's doomed to have a crash course with the planet. So we got all these things flying onto the planet the whole time. Not the best place to be is an apocalyptic time frame with a temp pad that doesn't allow you to move anywhere else. Cliff, what were your thoughts on this beginning and this basically the beginning of the storyline for this episode?
Okay, I forget. Is the beginning of the episode when she's also reading the mind when she's like
You were skipping that part for now.
we're skipping
yes.
that for now. Okay.
Yes.
Really cool fight scene. I know that just by looking at her social media, if I can remember her name, the actress that played the variant. Did I delete? There we go. Sorry about that. I thought I had my IMDb up. Sophia Di Martino. It was actually pretty cool. She had an interview where she said when she was cast as the variant, she was actually pregnant at the time, and
Oh, really?
and this was a very intensive role fight wise because you're playing a form of god slash goddess technically. And she also posted a video of her going through the motions of when they were teaching her the fight scene, which I thought was really cool. It was a really cool fight scene, and the way that she would actually like, we don't know if it kills them. We don't know what the stick truly does. Like, does it just make you cease to exist? Like, does it like teleport you back to your original moment in time? Like, what does this stick do to you?
So I have a thought on that. So I had a good talk with one of my buddies, Mikey, who's really getting into the MCU now and stuff. So I think that stick that they like can poke you and you like disintegrate. You're a variant. You're not the original. So I think that you're in the sacred timeline. If there is such a real thing, we'll see what happens in the show. In that sacred timeline, even though you have a variant out somewhere else, that sacred timeline person is still going. So that's still moving forward in time, but that variant just disappears. But the main sacred timeline OG person doesn't know that they have somebody out there that just got disintegrated. Is how I took that as.
Okay, I like that. Really cool fight scene, and then Ravonna seeing her in action. I'll put that in air quotes. Was also interesting because now raises questions to me about who she is. We'll talk about that
Yeah,
as the major plot point down the line. Um, yeah, we'll talk about it soon. And it was funny how Loki just happened to pick a horrible location
yeah.
for the end of the world or end of civilization
And
where they are.
and I'll say this too. I thought it was so funny that Sylvie and Loki, like Sylvie wants to go meet the timekeepers. Um, we don't know exactly for what reason yet. Whereas like Loki wants to probably destroy them and control the space time continuum. I thought it was very funny that like, oh, you need to speak to the timekeepers. You go up a golden elevator. Like it's just like that's what you're doing to get to talk to the timekeepers is an elevator, which I thought was just funny. No, but the fight scene to get to the elevator was really really badass. It was really cool. I thought Sylvie and Loki did both really well because they were obviously really not on the same team, but they were as far as like building a mini alliance throughout the fight, which I think is hard to do to start threading the needle on. Here's their connection here when they're completely at opposite sides before they go into the TVA when they go from Roxcart, excuse me, to the TVA. So I thought it was cool they started really threading that needle of this. I don't know what you call it, friendship, relationship, alliance kind of thing between the two. I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, it was. The other thing is when we'll just call her Sylvie, whatever. It was spoiled last week by the international labelers anyway. Oh, go ahead. You go
Yeah,
ahead.
let's go. Do you want to continue with that with
Yeah,
Sylvie?
we'll keep her with Sylvie. I just want to add, it was also interesting because everything, like even when like Loki tries to stop Sylvie in some form or capacity, and that is what Ravonna walks up on is Loki trying to stop Sylvie, and then Sylvie takes Loki captive, and Ravonna's still ready to just sorry Loki, like you're gone, which was just so weird to me. Which it adds more to the villainry of the TVA. I think it's pretty much confirmed at the end of this episode, if we're being
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see. I really liked someone brought up a really good point where Sylvie and Loki are the protagonists, but they're not the heroes.
That's probably a great point.
That
Yeah,
was
no,
that was such a
yes,
good way to explain it because um, a hero is there to save the day. They're there for them. They're there to be serving to everyone else. Like Superman is the original like hero, but these two are both very self-serving. So they can be the good guys, but they're not the heroes in
yeah,
any sense of the word. They might become the hero. I could picture this Loki becoming a hero, um, but they're just the protagonists for now.
yeah. And like we said, so just continuing on here, so the planet of Lamentis where they have landed, um, they're kind of SOL at this point. The Tempad is out of juice, and now Sylvie is gonna have to team up with Loki to find a power source so that way they can get out of this place because this moon and this planet are gonna crash in 12 hours, and they're gonna be caught in the middle of the apocalyptic event, which is definitely not something that they want to do. While this is happening, we do begin to learn about Sylvie some more. So based off the way I took it, and you had a little bit of different opinion, but the way I took it, this is officially a Loki variant. I know we were discussing last week. Is this Loki? Is this potentially Sylvie like Enchantress? It seems like MCU is going a little bit of both. So Sylvie is a Loki variant who does not want to go by the name Loki. For what reason? We don't know yet. So she's going by the alias Sylvie, but she has the same magic powers of Enchantress from like the comics. So it's like one of those characters that Disney and Marvel modge podge together into one person, which I thought was interesting. It was definitely an interesting take because before I was thinking it was had to be diametrically opposed, like is either Loki variant or it was Enchantress Sylvie. It's a cool way to meld both together without having to explain. I think it's easy to explain this is a Loki variant who just likes the name Sylvie but has Enchantress powers than to go through a whole backstory of like my name's Sylvie, but I met a Loki and they taught me this and they screwed me over kind of thing. Like I like the way they did this. What were your thoughts on that, Cliff?
Yeah, it would have been, oh, I'm Sylvie, I'm also Enchantress, but you, Loki, created me, because a lot of them, Enchantress is the daughter, because Loki literally like creates her out of magic, I believe.
There's some
Yeah.
stories too where Sylvie is just a normal human and just gets her
Oh,
powers
okay.
from Loki.
I mean, as we know from Doctor Strange, anyone can learn magic. It's just on what level can they? Like someone learned used it just to be able to walk again, but then Doctor Strange was much more susceptible. Um, I'll change it slightly. I think what they're going for, and it's a good distinction, is like we know Loki is gender fluid, and it could be that to make life easiest is that the Sylvie variant of Loki is like when you get a female Loki, they're not Loki, they're Enchantress. That would also be a cool way to do it, where it's like they're one and the same, and it lets you differentiate between Loki and Lady Loki, because that gets confusing. But they just make Enchantress just the female Loki. Like Lady Loki is now Enchantress. That would also be cool because her powers are a lot more like Enchantress and not Loki though. Loki cannot do the mind control thing. He needed the scepter and only the scepter for that. He couldn't do it outside of that.
Well, what's nice about that too is you got to remember, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. So, like Loki learns his magic from Freya, his mother, whereas Sylvie has to learn her powers and her magic on her own. So we'll see why that was, how she learned it, who did she learn it from, if anything. Like, did she have a book or something? I'm very excited because we obviously know that this is going to also lead into Multiverse of Madness, just like WandaVision. I
She
want
made it
some
seem
sort of
like she made it seem like she just learned by like being like boop, okay, I can get into your head now. That's how I took that.
I feel like there's got to be more than that, though. She might have just said that, but I feel like there's got to be more. But I would really love to see either Sylvie versus Wanda or Sylvie and Wanda teaming up using their red and green magic would be pretty cool. But anyway, so that
I
wouldn't that be sick?
No, I just realized, yes, that would be cool. And we'll talk about something in 2 seconds, but they also, if people have ever watched The Walking Dead, the more recent seasons, the actress that plays the current Rick's daughter is cast as young Sylvie in Loki. It's been confirmed on IMDb.
Interesting.
So we're actually going to get a young
Backstory.
Sylvie flashback. But no, you know how like the whole thing where like Taylor Swift fans are like obsessive and like can like dissect things to a T? Do you know
Yes.
that? We have figured that out.
Obsessive in a good way.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, obsessive is not only a negative. Um, Marvel fans are like that also, and this
We literally have a podcast because we are like that.
that's true.
Just want to
Um,
point out that wasn't a negative.
I saw
That's fine.
a TikTok the other day, yesterday, and it was like, "Oh, watch this interview with Tom Hiddleston." And it's like, "Oh, it was great. Like I, I had my birthday, and I was playing Loki on my birthday." But someone was like, but Tom Hiddleston's birthday is February 9th. We already knew that Loki had finished rapping by then. So that means he's already in a new movie that we haven't been told. And I'm like, wow, Marvel fans,
They don't
they're
miss a
they're
beat.
good. They're good.
They don't miss a beat.
So what is he? Is he in Wanda, or is he in Multiverse of Madness? Is he in Love and Thunder? But I don't think Love and Thunder had started filming then. So I think that Loki is going to be this, because I saw this girl's TikTok. I believe that Loki now is going to be in Multiverse of Madness, and people said it makes sense because like the Nexus events, like Nexus stuff is happening in Loki. It hasn't been touched anywhere else. So I think we're getting more this variant Loki in another movie very soon.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Kevin Feige has said Loki's going to be in Multiverse of Madness.
But
Whether it's
which
this
one?
specific, well, that's the thing. So, is it Sylvie? Is it this Loki? My guess is it's going to be both because there's no way you just don't do both. And
No,
it sounds like definitely
yeah.
Tom Hiddleston is going to be in it. So we'll see if um, Sylvie is in this as well. Um, but continue on, just real quick. So basically, they're trying to find a power source. They go to some old woman's home. They try to trick her, especially Loki tries to trick her, think it's her husband, so they can get into it. They're unwelcome. They learned that all the locals are not in the town. They're the old lady points them at what's called the Ark, where people are waiting evacuation. To get there, they have to take a train that would take them to the Ark ship that will hopefully get them off planet, off of or off moon, I guess, off of Lamentis one, so that way they can survive this apocalyptic event. We learn later that in every timeline that should happen, in the sacred timeline at least, the Ark never makes it out. But the Ark would be a sufficient power source to for the temp pad to be recharged. So Loki and Sylvie head off to there. To bypass getting onto the train, Loki disguises himself. They eventually get onto the train. Not too much going on there. But the big thing is, while on the train, Loki and Sylvie have a chance to start, and that's where we learn a lot more about Loki and Sylvie. So the big thing that we learn is so Loki obviously didn't know his parents. He didn't even know he was adopted until Thor the movie, um, and that's when he found out he's adopted. And we know that he learned his magic from Freya, his adopted mother. Sylvie, on the other hand, um, basically like knew she was adopted. She knew right away. She was self-taught in magic. She knew her heritage, but she doesn't remember her mother. Whereas Loki grew up with Freya, loved his mother, was crying in episode one, watching her death and realizing, oh my god, I'm gonna do this in the sacred timeline. It's my fault. She's dead. Um, so very diametrically opposed kind of lifestyles for these two Lokis. Whereas one know they're adopted, they had to teach themselves magic, had no relationship with the mother. Whereas Loki thought Freya was his biological mother, loved her to death basically, and learned his magic from there. So that was pretty interesting. Any thoughts on that, Cliff?
Yeah, it's confusing to me personally about what where is this variant from? Because we're supposed to know it's a single sacred timeline. Where does she come from? Is she a variant from another universe that broke into the sacred timeline? What is she, or is it that Loki was? We know Loki is gender fluid, so can appear in any gender. Um, was it just a branch when she branched when she was young, and then has just been on the run from the TVA? Or it's just weird. It's not sounding like a variant. It sounds like, if anything, she's a variant of a different Loki in a different universe. That's what's so confusing to me, because I'm like, where does it branch off? Because if there's a sacred timeline, when did she branch off? Because we follow Loki through the whole story. We know Loki's whole story, but we know that he's also the most common variant. It's just so confusing. But also, there was never a female variant before Loki, before this one, at least, because they kept saying
That we know of, at
he.
least.
Well, because Mobius kept saying he. Oh,
Right.
the variant is him and stuff like that. So now it's like, where is she from? And we're gonna learn. And it sounds like we will be getting a backstory. Maybe next episode. That would actually make sense.
Yeah.
But
And Loki, Sylvie could be messing up with us too. Maybe she really isn't. She's just like, oh yeah, I am a Loki kind of thing. I got this for and stuff like that. But other things could be variants too. Like just because she's adopted doesn't mean it doesn't sound like Odin and Freya were her adopted parents. It doesn't seem, at least. She barely knew who her adopted mother was, so she could have been adopted by somebody else completely. We don't know yet.
that's true.
Maybe Agatha is her adopted mother. I don't know. For all we
It
know, who
was
cares?
her all along.
Oh my god, can you imagine? Wait, hold on. Now my brain is broken. That would be actually fantastic if that's what
Oh,
happened.
actually, it does say young Sylvie for episode 4, so we'll see.
Yeah, so we'll see that
Um,
soon. Anything else on this? But it's nice backstory to get. It's interesting. And what's also interesting is I'm pretty sure they confirmed that Loki's bisexual. So shout out to representation. Shout out to Pride Month. That's
they
awesome.
definitely did. Very nice. I really liked Kate Herron's Twitter thing about that, because it is important.
Yeah,
Representation matters.
that's pretty cool that they did that. So shout out to Marvel Cinematic Universe for doing that. They basically make a line where Sylvie essentially says like, "Oh, did you have like a young princess
Or Prince.
waiting for you there on Asgard, you prince, or like maybe even you had a prince?" And Loki says something about a little bit of both or something like that. So Loki's bisexual. Cool. That's awesome. Representation matters. Love is love. That's awesome. We love to see that here. Um, so anyway, so going off this, they have this nice little moment. They had a really cute moment too, where like Sylvie's kind of falling asleep, and Loki just leads everybody in a big Asgardian song for her, which is pretty funny. But in doing so, he drops his guard uniform that he used to sneak into the train to get to the Ark. Another fight ensues, which I thought was also really, really great. Little brawl that comes up. So that was pretty interesting. They get booted from the train, and now they decide, wait, okay, we still have to get to the Ark. We can walk there. And that's when Sylvie kind of gives up her hand, like, listen, the Ark actually in this timeline never makes it off this planet. So Loki has to come up with a plan, like, okay, we just got to get to the Ark to charge it up before it tries taking off and it explodes. Basically, we got to beat it before it doesn't actually make off the planet. Um, they're going back and forth. They're trying to find the Ark and they're trying to get there. But what we get is a pretty interesting little tidbit, and it goes back to the very first thing we saw in this episode. So, like I mentioned before, we see a little bit of backstory of like what was happening when Sylvie was trying to get information um, from Hunter C20 um, to figure out where the timekeepers were. We see that she's basically puts herself into C20's mind, into her memories, which is really cool to probe into them to get the information from C20. And Sylvie lets it slip to Loki that she had to go back hundreds of years prior to find a memory in C20's memory to infiltrate. And Loki was like, "What are you talking about? Like, how did it take hundreds of years? Like, that doesn't make any sense." Like, they joined the TVA, and Sylvie basically lets it slip. Like, she's a variant. All the timekeepers are variants. Um, the whole workforce is a variant, which is something I think you alluded to, Cliff, last week as a prediction. Like, I think these are all variants, and I went along with that. I was like, no, that would make sense, and it would make sense if Mobius thought his only sole purpose of being alive was that he was part of the TVA. The timekeepers created the TVA, and he just showed up one day. It makes sense that Mobius is a variant. It makes sense that all these people are variants. B15, C20, they're all variants, which is so interesting. So how do the TVA, how do they warp their minds to make them basically like turn from like knowing they're a variant, kind of like how Loki and Sylvie both know that they're variants, to then just working for the TVA and helping out this organization, which also leads to us believing the TVA is a pretty evil organization. Maybe not the variants inside because they might not know better, but you can't tell me that Renslayer and the Timekeepers don't have some sort of secret agenda. You know what I mean? What were your thoughts on this? This is a pretty big reveal.
Okay, before we even get to the bombshell, two things about the train scene. We know that the Loki and Sylvie are both bisexual, or pan, whatever it is, whatever they're gonna allude to. They were flirting with each other.
Very funny that Loki just loves Loki. Like looking at a
That's
mirror,
the
I
thing.
love
It
that.
would make sense. Loki would love Loki, so it makes sense. Loki is love. I'm not gonna finish that. And the singing in Asgardian was absolutely beautiful.
It was so touching.
I knew Tom Hiddleston could sing because he was in a movie a few years ago where, if anyone remembers the little yodeling kid in Walmart,
Yes,
um,
Yo
the
boy,
so- yes, Mason Ramsey,
Nathan Ramsey. Yeah, yeah.
the song that he sings, Tom Hiddleston plays the singer of that song in like a biopic,
Oh, that's
and
funny.
it's really good. It's a really good. He's very talented in the singing in that. Um, okay, so this giant bombshell. I will not take credit for it, but it makes the podcast look good that we talked about it last week. Yes, I saw that theory on Reddit, and I'm like, that makes sense, because it wasn't adding up. Because how would Mobius have known so much about jet skis? His variant probably decided to get a jet ski instead of do what he was supposed to do that day, and that's what happened.
Right.
Yeah, Ravonna definitely is going to end up being something either created by it, and we think obviously she's mentioned she has a secret contact outside, probably her boyfriend, who shall be in Ant Man, the primary villain of Ant Man. Um, I can't remember his name.
The
um,
Conqueror.
yeah, Kang.
There you go.
Um,
You got it. I knew it was
Thank
King, but I
you.
just wanted to hopefully push you
And
toward it.
there's a really fun TikToker. I wish I remembered his name. That's a very big comic nerd, and he talked about how he thinks that all three timekeepers are all three different versions of Kang the Conqueror, and
Interesting.
then the original Kang is outside of the timekeepers, which makes sense. He's trying to dictate. He's trying to control this timeline. Yeah, they're bad. They're the big bad of everything. They are worse than Thanos.
Oh, wow. I
If you think about it, they said Thanos is going to do this and then lose due to time travel. It's not allowed in anything else, but we're going to allow it this one time. It's like a giant spectacle for them.
it's true.
My
I mean,
oh
for
god,
all intents and purposes, Thanos killed half of one universe in one timeline. They're basically trying to kill off multiple multiverses, basically, and keep the sacred timeline.
in
So it makes
some
sense.
yeah,
That's
so
the most evil
they
thing right now.
exactly.
There's so evil they don't even care about the freaking Infinity Stones. They just keep a drawer full of them. They don't care.
I know.
Crazy.
And I think Ravonna is either going to be like misled or like forced. I don't think she's going to be a villain.
Oh,
I
see, I
don't.
do.
You do. I
Yeah,
think it.
I think she's the big bad this season.
Oh, you think she's the big bad?
Yeah, I think
Oh, I
she's the
don't think
main
she's the.
timekeeper.
Okay. And then my other question with these timekeepers is That's the thing, though. She was one of the people that would go through and cleanse the timeline. So a is she maybe she's the first variant? Maybe she's the first ever variant for the TVA.
Maybe.
That would be interesting. Um, then my
That'd
question,
actually be interesting if she didn't know she was a variant. That could be an interesting if she wasn't a timekeeper. I think she is a timekeeper, but that'd be an interesting way to go about it also.
but then my big questions are what differentiates you getting a name from a number? So we know that Sasha Lane plays Hunter C-20
Right.
C20, but Mobius is Mobius.
It's a great question.
What gets maybe if you're more of a violent timeline, maybe if you're a violent variant, you get
Maybe if you're specifically a hunter, like Mobius might not be a hunter because he
that's
doesn't wear the same garb. Maybe that's what it is.
that's the thing. That's what I'm wondering. Like, how did Mobius get promoted like that? Is it because like maybe if you're a violent variant, you become a hunter, but then if you're a
Maybe.
more like, oh, I went and got ice cream instead of going to work. Oh, you're a
Maybe.
variant. You
Yeah.
become more of what Mobius is, and is more of like a detective for them. Or what lets you become what's his face, the one that the most powerful man in the whole entire timeline with all those Infinity Stones. What lets you become him?
Who are you
The
talking
guy that had
about? Oh, was it Clyde?
yeah, I think Clyde. What lets you
Oh,
become
let's see.
Clyde? So there's all these questions I have. I think we're gonna get these answered though. They have been doing such a good job of laying the groundwork and then going back to it the next week, which I'm very impressed with because they do it so subtly.
Yeah. I mean, we get a great cliffhanger here too. So essentially, they get to the arc. They're trying to push through. It's a huge crowd. They're like, okay, we're gonna find a different way in, and that's when the meteor hits, and the arc goes boom. Arc is bye bye. There goes their option of getting off planet. Besides the temp pad, they have no other way of charging the temp pad as of right now, and that's where we end this episode. And it was a great cliffhanger. Like I said, I liked episode 1 and 2 better, but this was still a fantastic episode. We learn a lot about Loki. We learn a lot about Sylvie, and I think we're going to even learn more about Sylvie, especially if we're going to get young Sylvie next episode. So I like the way that they did this, where it wasn't we had to learn about young Sylvie and then we see where she is now. We get her boom right after the Rock's cart incident, and basically blowing up the multiverse. So I think the next episode we're going to get her backstory a little bit. I'm assuming we'll find a way off of um, off Moon. Basically, we're going to find a way off Lamentis, and we'll see what else was bombed by Sylvie in episode 2. Where else in the multiverse is bombed? I'll see if we get Mobius reaction because we didn't get really any Mobius besides that little beginning. So excited to see Mobius hopefully again next episode. I'm very excited to see. But any final thoughts, Cliff? But just for me, great episode and everything I just said.
I know I'm looking through the reviews on IMDb and people are like, "What a weak episode! What this? What this?" I'm like, "You're probably just mad about what conspired, and you're saying, oh, the whole thing was bad because of it." I won't get into that. You can fight me on Twitter at CP Robinson81, and
Thanks.
I was happy with it. It was cool to see like she lost her horn for fighting. She lost the cape, and it finally showed her cool outfit. Um, was this a filler?
No, I don't think so.
No.
No. It's giving you more info. It's a little filler, but I don't think it's. But it's not. That's not a bad thing. Like we talk about that a lot. Filler should not be a negative word. Just like obsession shouldn't be a negative word. Like
Well, sometimes it should. Not in this.
sure,
Not in
yes,
how it was today.
not how we were. But I think this was a filler, but not in a bad sense because it was also non-filler. We get that big drop about the TVA being full of variants. We get the backstory of Sylvie, and we're gonna get more of it too. Like I said, I kind of get where people were a little disappointed with this episode, and it wasn't that I was disappointed with it. Is comparatively to 1 or 2, this was a weaker episode than 1 or 2. But even at its weak, saying it's weaker, I would watch this over anything in the world because it was still fantastic. It just wasn't the holy cow of 1 and 2, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But this is the thing where when you go back and watch it, this is gonna be the episode where you're like, wow, this is where it all changed. Tom
Like for
Hiddleston,
me, let's put it in
yeah,
sports context. For me, this is like Super Bowl 53. Like the Super Bowl 51, the Patriots comeback Super Bowl. That's the high. That's my episode 1. That's my episode 2. And Super Bowl 53 is my episode 3. It's still sweet as hell. I still bought all the gear. I still went to the parade. I was going nuts and stuff like that. But the game wasn't as exciting, as momentous as it was for 1 and 2. But it was still, holy cow, this is amazing. What a feeling this is. That was
yeah,
pretty good. That was a pretty good
that
analogy.
was that was good. That I guess I guess so.
I had
What
six Super
about
Bowls to choose from, which was nuts. So it
where's
was great.
Super Bowl 62 for you?
62 hasn't happened
Oh
yet.
no, I'm just bad at reading.
Yep, you really are. You meant
Yeah,
42, and
I'm
we're
at
not going to talk about
42.
that. Cliff, where can people find you? CP Rob
Well,
81, I believe.
I will end on. Oh, see, I messed up. How sad.
For those of you that don't know, I'm a big Patriots fan. Cliff is a big Giants fan. For you, those of you who are listening who are not sports fans, Super Bowl 42 is when the Patriots went 18-1 and lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants to ruin their perfect season. I cried in my basement for about 3 hours. We can keep going with the Disney podcast. Just
I
want to
know.
get back to people who had no idea what the hell we were talking
As
about.
this last Sunday was Father's Day, I really hope Tom called Eli. But you can find me at CP Robinson 81 to talk all things Disney Plus. I know we'll have a lot more coming up, and we'll get to talk 2 episodes of Bad Batch for Tuesday.
And you can find me on Twitter at CamRamos95. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Stream the Mouse. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Streaming with the Mouse. Find us on our website, cprob.com/streaming with the mouse. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, and now on YouTube, where you can now watch us talk about this stuff, which is pretty fun. You get to see my little Funko Pop collection in the background if you're listening. But we're super excited. I love this episode. I love this show. I'm really excited to talk about Cad Bane's return, and we'll talk about the new episodes of Bad Batch next week, and we'll also be back next week to talk episode 4 of Loki. From Cam Ramos, no, that's not how you say this. From Cliff and Paul Robinson, I'm Cam Ramos. Have a magical day, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
I'm really gonna laugh if Super Bowl 62 the Giants beat the Patriots.
Enough of this. Say goodbye to the people, Cliff.
Goodbye, people.